Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by Rick Vavro and Austin Underground. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined each and every day by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. Hope you all had a great Christmas out there. Tell us where you're checking in from. Tell us your favorite gift, even what you're drinking. Get your questions in. We'll get to those here in a little bit. Also, want to give a big shout out to Duck Camp, as they're sponsoring this college football playoff week, guys. We're getting closer and closer. About 6 days away? So let's start talking about that. And, of course, not a lot of movement line-wise. In fact, it actually went back down half a point. But as we're 6 days out, the teams starting to practice again or about to practice again. What's y'all's thoughts?
Yeah, so practice resumes. For those that don't know, players had Tuesday and Christmas Day off, got back to Austin last night, practiced this morning. Then the operations part of the Texas program starts moving towards Atlanta on the 27th and 28th with the equipment buses, the 18-wheeler, all that. Team practices in Austin the 26th, 27th, 28th. They practice some Sunday morning on the 29th, then fly out to Atlanta, and then they'll have 2 days of practice in Mercedes-Benz in the Dome prior to the game. So that's a look at kind of how the schedule is going to be the rest of the way until game day. And yeah, I mean, look, it's 6 days away. I couldn't be more excited. The line's low. I couldn't be more excited. I'm ready, man. I'm ready for all these games. And I know we're going to talk about some other bowl games coming up Friday too, because it's Rivalry Hate Day Friday, man. It's a great list of bowl games to talk about. See who y'all hate worse in the chat.
OU, A&M, etc.
It's hard.
Not sure that's the right order, but that's the way it is. Jerry's right. Back on the field today, tomorrow, heading into the weekend, and off on the 29th, I believe it is, to Atlanta. There are not as many festivities for the players to participate in as a normal bowl might be, given that they're in the college football playoffs. So don't expect that. But there are still some, much more than there were, say, for last weekend's home game against Clemson. So it's a little bit of a mix that they're trying to massage between. Look at Brian Berg. Eggnog and salted caramel Crown Royal for the win. That's called a Christmas hangover right there, Brian. Yeah. That may be, hair of the dog a little bit, I guess. Hey, what I was going to say, as it relates to all of what Texas is doing right now, it also puts them in a unique position as it relates to the portal, Jerry. The portal is now in a dead period. Recruiting as a whole is in the dead period right now. That does not reopen till January 1st. And so while there may be 3 or 4 defensive linemen Texas is looking at, no other team can have them in on official visits either. Texas is going to try to continue on and recruit some players, but they can't have them in until January 1st, which means for Texas, really not until January 2nd, right? And then they can have them in from there on. Another piece of that, and this goes towards something I tried to mention and talk about on TexasFootball.com. There are a lot of teams that have finished their seasons. If their players don't go in the portal by January 28th, they're not going in the portal this cycle. Or excuse me, December 28th. They're not going in the portal by this. So Clemson, for example, who Texas just played, today's the 26th. If that player or players are not in the portal by Saturday, they're not going in the portal. And so we're watching all of that right now, and that's something to monitor for everybody as well. But playing all these games while the portal is ongoing is and practicing, et cetera, very difficult for everybody to get stuff going.
Josie, come on. Put it in 23. Put it in 23.
All right. Well, Jerry, you mentioned it a second ago. Tomorrow, big, I guess, hated rival day is what we can call it, as we open the day with Navy versus Oklahoma at 11. Got Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt thrown in there as well. But then Arkansas versus Texas Tech at 6 p.m., followed by Syracuse and Washington State. And the nightcap, Texas A&M versus USC. And a lot of teams for Texas fans to hate
That chat or the chat. Who do you want to lose the most out of these? I mean, I'm guessing Navy beating Oklahoma would kind of be New Year's Day early, right, for a lot of Texas fans. Arkansas Tech, I mean, who'd even pick? Like, and then
can Tech use any of their transfer portal guys that they've signed?
I hadn't even looked at this, but a UFC fight literally could break out between Haynes King and Diego Pavia in the Birmingham Bowl. I mean, are there two more rugged, just I don't give a quarterbacks about contact in college football than these two guys? They just all let them go Oklahoma drill for the winner.
I gotta say, Oklahoma Navy. If Navy beats Oklahoma, that may be the nadir of Brent Venables' time in Norman. If that happens, I will say, OU. We know about John Mateer, by the way, a young man out of Washington State that committed to Oklahoma. He is a highly rated transfer portal quarterback, originally from the state of Texas. That was a big get for Oklahoma. They went a step further yesterday, Jerry. I don't know if you saw this or not. They picked up Western Carolina's quarterback as well. So they're going to have some depth in the quarterback room, unlike this past year. A young man had passed for 6,000 yards in the Southern Conference over in FCS territory. So they will at least have a qualified backup going into the A&M or going into the Texas game this year.
Hey, Bobby, Brian followed up and said, no eggnog this morning, just peppermint flavored coffee from Brian. So taking it a little easier this morning.
Good for you. I was like, wow, he's starting the morning off strong.
Hey, we're also getting to the point in some of these other bowl games where it's going to be crazy to see how few players are on the sidelines for some of these teams. I mean, like, you're going to be in the 40s, 50s, or low 50s. It's going to look like a high school sidelines for some of these teams. I mean, how many?
A&M has 27.
How many players does Arkansas have left? USC, the USC A&M game, where they're going to be 100 players combined on the sidelines. I mean, like, we're getting to that. It's going to be interesting to see how few players there actually are on these sidelines, and it's just going to be this may be the attrition games because you just don't have any depth.
Yeah.
And we have tons of questions. We have a lot of questions. We're going to get to your questions, guys. I've seen a few Arizona State questions come through. We're going to get to all your questions, by the way.
That's right. First, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell everyone out there about Rick Favreau and Austin Underground.
Sure thing. Since 2004, Austin Underground has specialized in difficult underground commercial installations. The team's engineering background gives Austin Underground the ability to perform work other firms often consider too risky. Rick Favreau and his team offer an end-to-end client experience, including seamless communication, budgeting, staffing, and top-notch trade partners. And most importantly, they produce solid quality work each and every time. That's Austin Underground.
Thank you for that. And more to talk about. Let's look at the ratings have came out for the college football playoff, the first round here. And remember, they went up against NFL games for the most part. Of course, Ohio State, that whooping they put on Tennessee, leads the pack, 14.3 million. Then you have the Indiana Notre Dame game, 13.4, followed by Texas and Clemson with 8.6, and Penn State and SMU at 6.4. Of course, it is worth noting those first two were on ESPN, and the second set was on TNT.
And who went up against NFL as well, right? That keeps you down a couple of million. Yeah.
Yeah, TNT went up against NFL. By the way, the timing on those two TNT games are backwards, Blake, on your graphic. Texas actually had the 4 o'clock Eastern game, right?
Yep, you are correct.
Yep. Look, the bottom line, it was the most watched TNT sporting event in December ever.
Yeah,
apparently. So it did its part for TNT. I think it did a disservice, however, to college football. And I think that's more in line with where this thing needs to go in the future. They probably need to not go up against the NFL. Although the NFL, for its part, is not going to, give them any free days. Maybe a Friday they'll give them. Like right now, they had 2 games yesterday on Wednesday. They'll have 1 game tonight, the rest on Saturday, Sunday. So I look at it as the college football needs to figure out a way, whether that means pushing the season up. They need to figure out a way to get done before the NFL goes into the playoffs, is my opinion, and gets into this non-routine around the holidays. We'll figure out what it all means, but TNT versus ESPN, that's going to happen. It was a record-setting day, though, for TNT.
It was indeed. Okay, guys. Well, let's move on to the next here. We haven't talked about recruiting much. Portal, of course, has been the hot topic. But, Jerry, let's talk a little high school recruiting 2026.
Yeah, we're going to start to introduce you guys to some of the top 2026 guys, too. And we're going to start with two legacies that aren't just legacies, but guys that are Jalen Lott, top 75 guy in the country for me after seeing him in person. Jalen Lott here, son of James Lott and Faye Lott. Obviously, James Lott. Bobby can talk about James Lott and what he did at the University of Texas. Jalen Lott is at Panther Creek in Frisco. His mom played for Jody Conrad. He plays corner, wide out, and in the return game. I think he can do either one effectively. A big time in Power 4 football at the blue blood level. Although Texas has been recruiting him more at defensive back, and I don't know if he necessarily has a preference. But his sister also plays basketball at UNLV. Very, very athletic family. He's the state high jump champion last year. Long jump 24-3 this summer in Junior Olympics. He is really, I think, is more explosive as an athlete as a junior than he was as a sophomore. Obviously, he's older, but he's also he's continuing to develop. He's not close to his ceiling. But Bobby, his high jumping is not a surprise with James Lott being his father.
No, his dad held the UT record for a long time, clearing 7 foot. Not any relation to Ronnie Lott. His dad's James Lott from Refugio originally. Played at Texas. He was a DB, a very good DB at the University of Texas. Played a little bit, had a cup of coffee in the NFL. The thing about Jalen, to your point, Jerry, is what position is he? I mean, is he a wide receiver? Is he a DB? You look at him, and I think he could be a very gifted wide receiver. But you also look at how he just turned and ran with that guy as a corner.
Oh, yeah.
You're thinking, could he be a top 5 pick as a corner? I mean, that when I say that, I'm trying not to overstate it, but he can run, he can turn, he can backpedal. That's just really rare at his height and length. That's the other thing. Long arms, long legs. I mean, James was a good athlete. His son might be just a tad better, to be honest.
Somebody's asking how tall Jalen is. 5'11" and change is what I would say after seeing him in person during the season. They also have a 2026 safety on that team that I think is dynamite that Texas hasn't offered. He's been to a couple of games. I think Texas will offer him. Ohio State, Oklahoma, A&M, everybody else has offered him recently. They have a safety that is a stud on that team. Great playmaker, would fit right in at Texas. But the other thing with Jalen Lott to me is, and I always, you have to keep in mind when you watch some of these kids, he's playing 80, 85 snaps a game. He's playing both sides of the ball, special teams. He's literally like Quandre Diggs. You play until you cramp. So I think if you ever go really dive into a guy like this, you almost got to watch the first quarter when he's super fresh in games to see him at his absolute fastest, most explosive. Because these guys like this play a ton of snaps. And I lived through it with Quandre Diggs recruitment. In the first quarter and a half a game, when they're on snaps 1 through 40, essentially, or 35, that is when they're at their most explosive, at times most impressive. But this guy's got really good stamina. He doesn't seem to have much of a drop off when he gets to play 60, 70 as a high school kid playing both sides of the ball and special teams.
Some of these
a lot time frame committing, hard to say on that. I mean, he's made Texas is the favorite, but he's been to USC, he's been to Oregon, he's been to LSU. He has everybody coming after him. Georgia, Alabama, everybody's coming after him. Obviously he'll be at Texas as much as Texas wants him in town, and I do think Texas is the favorite. But again, these recruiting's different nowadays. I don't think just because a kid is a legacy to a school means he's going to up and commit in January. Now, I think times are different now. But I think Texas is working from a really good place. And I think he's a top 75 kid in the country. And our next guy, Blake, is
wait 1 second. I have a question for you, Jerry. Is he a dual sport athlete like his dad on the collegiate level, or do we know that yet?
Oh, well, yeah, he long jumped 24 and a half, but I'm not sure he will go that route, but he can if he wants to. He's going to be a near 25-foot long jumper if he wants to be, which places.
So we don't know for sure yet what he wants to do, but he has that within him. Okay, got it.
Our next guy, so look, Texas fans, you got two tremendous legacies in this class. It's Caden Finley out of Aledo, Jermichael Finley's son. Obviously, Jermichael's been on our show before. Caden Finley, and if people are wondering, what's he going to play? He's going to play wideout. Does Texas want him? They want him badly. Bobby, he's like he's 6 foot, 200, probably going to be at 6 foot, 6 foot and a half, 205, 210-pound guy. He's almost a bigger version of DeAndre Moore for me. He had 81 receptions for 1,430 yards this year, 21 touchdowns. He's now up to 2,500 receiving yards in 3 years with 34 touchdowns. But early on, like his freshman year of high school, people were wondering, is this guy going to grow into a tight end like his pops, right? Because they're wondering how tall, how big he's going to get. But I think he's going to end up being 6 foot, 6'1", and about 205, 210. And he is going to play wide receiver. And he really it reminds me of a bigger version of DeAndre Moore.
You'll take those guys all day long. I would say this: the good thing about legacies, Jerry, that we need to talk about is they understand intuitively what it means to be at Texas.
Yeah.
Alex January, for example, his dad Mike played at Texas. He understood what Texas was all about. It didn't make Texas an automatic choice for him.
No.
Right? And nor will it for these guys. But Texas has to be a good opportunity, and they have to be able to see themselves as a fit. I think that understanding that and knowing what it takes, especially guys that have been around pro ball, like Caden Finley with Jermichael Finley, they understand the toughness, that it's a grind. It's not just this it's not this fun thing you go do on Saturdays, right? Or Friday nights. It's a grind to be as good as you want to be. Their dads understand that. So whether it's James Lott or Mike January or Jermichael Finley, they get it. And, I think that you see legacies and coaches' kids kind of similar in that regard, right, Jerry? In that they've gotten at least some people around them that can kind of ground them into thinking, okay, this is what you really need to do. This is the kind of sacrifice you actually have to make if you're going to be your very, very best. And I think those kind of kids, frankly, have a leg up most of the time. I'm not saying it's insurmountable or something that they'll never get past or somebody can't supersede, because clearly that happens all the time. But it absolutely gives those young men a leg up in life. At least in a football life perspective.
Yeah, and absolutely. And the one thing I want to say is, I want to be clear on an opinion of mine is, just because a kid went to a school doesn't mean you just say, hey, I'm raising my hand, I'm coming here. We're in the NIL day and age. Everybody needs to get, these kids are highly ranked players. You don't just raise your hand and say, I'm in, man. Thanks for the offer. It doesn't work that way anymore. You got to earn these recruitments because the game has changed. And but I think all things equal, I like Texas' chances on both of these guys. And look, these are two of the better prospects in the state, better prospects in the country. So it hasn't been many classes at Texas, and maybe we're getting to that point where some of the guys Mac recruited that having kids coming up. And obviously James Lott's before that, but we're going to get to that point here in the next few years where there's some really talented legacies that I think are about to come up for the Texas programs in multiple sports, by the way. It's not just football, but these are two of the top, I think, 125 level prospects in the country when all's said and done. And that's a really good place to be for Texas, in that they have two of those guys whose fathers were standouts at Texas. And in the case of Lott, mother was as well for Jody Conrad. Somebody's asking about Vince's kid. He was a freshman at Kincaid. I haven't seen him. When I saw him when he was younger, he was working out in TJ Ford Academy playing point guard. I don't know where his growth is at right now. height-wise. I'll check on him. I know he's playing basketball as well. Shea Marenz's kid is also over at Kincaid. We'll check in on him. But I don't know, like Vince's son. He loved basketball, I think, more than football early on, where he's at in terms of his frame growth and development. We'll check on that since he's a freshman.
While we're talking about 2026s and legacies of the sort, and I talked about how pro players or parents who were college players or even coaches' kids have that innate kind of built-in system. A lot of them do, not all of them, but most of them do even. Don't forget about Dia Bell, the quarterback whose dad, Raja Bell, played in the NBA. He's the young man that's committed to Texas in the class of 2026 at quarterback. Another legacy of sorts, although a different sort, not one directly related to the University of Texas, but certainly a high-level athletic legacy. Those kind of guys, I will also say this, they attract one another a little bit.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the best way possible. It's those guys want to be around other guys that take this thing seriously.
And the parents have a lot in common.
Yes.
By the way, I wanted to mention this. The article's up on TexasFootball.com, but we're also entered in the All-America game stretch of high school football, the end of these guys' high school careers that are 2025. And I have that story up this morning, just a list of guys. But guys report for the Under Armour All-America practices. I believe that will be tomorrow to Orlando. Those practices are Disney Wide World of Sports. Lance Jackson playing in that game, so obviously won't be going through practices with Texas. KJ Lacey's playing in that game. Zalus Hicks is in that game. Jonah Williams, I believe, is attending, but obviously can't play. He's recovering from the fractured clavicle. And then in the Navy game, and I'm missing one in the Under Armour game. I need to look at my own list. In the Navy game, which used to be the Adidas All-America game, that's January 11th. Saturday the 11th in San Antonio in the Alamo Dome. KJ Lockett, Jamie French are in that game. We got nine guys. Justice Terry's the other one in the Under Armour game coming up. But then we have Cade Phillips also in the Navy game. So I think we have 9 guys. One's injured in the All-America games. The other kicker with these games now is they finally made the change, which I was a proponent of years ago. They finally made the change to make it a 25/26 game. So the cool thing about, like, say, the Under Armour game this year is you got some of those guys, because less guys, since so many guys are early enrollees, less guys are playing that are seniors or are playing in that extra all-star game. So it was eventually going to be pushed to move to the 26 game. Then I think NIL super put that on a fast train to where 25 and 26 guys are playing in the same game. Like the Under Armour game itself, the 2026 group is off the charts playing in that game. Like it's going to be that game you're going to look at and say, wow, there's the number 1 junior running back in America playing against a lot of these top 25 guys in the country, playing against Justice Terry and Lance Jackson. And that running back's Derek Cooper from Hollywood, Florida, Chaminade Madonna, in my opinion. He's an absolute beast. So you're going to see some of these 26s on the offensive line. That Under Armour game has 3, I think, of the top 5, maybe 3 of the top 4 turn times not playing. Junior offensive linemen, ranked guys in America. Jackson Cantwell from Nixa, Missouri, who's going to set the national discus and shot put records this year in high school. He's going to be going up against Justice Terry, Lance Jackson, all these 25 defensive linemen. So it's going to be a really cool look. And what it also turns into, Bobby, these games now just turned into a key evaluation for college football staffs, because they get to see the 26 guys go against guys that are committed to their schools, signed with their schools. So the evaluation game changed out of these games. And the Navy game has 26s as well.
Michael Terry, by the way, also in that Navy game. I want to make sure we mention him because he's a hometown guy. But, Jerry, some of those 26s that are playing in these games, Jamarian Carlton out of Temple is in it. Javian Osborne is in the UA game, next game. That one's a running back out of Forney. There's quite a few that Texas has got their eyes on. Tyler Atkinson, the linebacker out of Georgia that you've talked about a lot. I like the mix and match. I almost wish they would have 2 games separate. Maybe one of them does a 25 and one of them does a 26 instead of trying to mix it all up. I know you're a proponent of it, but I'd like to keep like this is it used to be, at least until everybody started becoming starting doing midterm enrollee. This used to really be a showcase for high school football late in the season. And with all of this mismatch or mixed match and sophomores and juniors and seniors playing the same game, it kind of takes that aspect and pageantry away from it. Some of it was overdone, some of that pageantry, no doubt. But at the same time, I think it was awesome for high school football fans and recruiting fans to see a game like that.
Yeah.
And just get a sense of their players. Now there's, too many variables maybe and too many games.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. We got some super chats that we need to jump over to, and we're going to do just that. Actually, before we get to that super chat, let me ask you this, Jerry, because we've had a few people ask about Osborne this week, actually. Jay says, I would appreciate a JV on Osborne update if there hasn't been one.
Not much new on his recruitment, honestly. I mean, these kids are it's dead period right now. He's playing in the Under Armour game as a 2026 running back coming up. So you can watch him play against a few Texas signees coming up January 2nd. That's on ESPN, I believe, at 3 p.m. Central there in Orlando area. But yeah, not recruiting wise, not much new there. I mean, a lot of this is you're really waiting now from a recruiting standpoint. Texas, Michigan, A&M, they're all in it for Osborne. And they're the schools that are mentioned the most. But we're about to get into the January junior days. Then you get into your spring unofficials. Then you get into your June officials. And that's when your NIL negotiations happen. So it's and I'm not saying some guys won't commit earlier than that with some teams that get aggressive through the NIL. But Bobby, the other thing we have coming up is, you have the resolution on the case with the NCAA coming in April. And how's that going to affect the 2026 recruiting for these colleges?
And they don't know.
They don't know yet.
Don't know because it's hanging in the balance right now, Jerry.
Yep.
They can't give kids definitive answers. Yep. And what's interesting to me is that some schools are acting like it's already done, and some schools are waiting to see if it's done. Because the last thing, and Steve Sarkisian is one of those is waiting to see if it's done, because he said the last thing he wants to do is recruit a guy and say, you can't come here, because they don't pass the resolution. The House Amendment is what it's called. And so I get it. And it leaves it into a tenuous situation. I feel pretty strongly that Texas is going to be okay, whatever way it goes. Other schools that don't have the NIL infrastructure and are just relying on the House settlement, it may not go as well.
Yeah.
I mean, so what happens if the money that they thought was going to be there through the House settlement all of a sudden isn't there? All these deals, they apparently, in reading an ESPN article, they have out clauses if the House settlement doesn't settle.
Yeah.
That talk about it being a bad situation for some kids that don't understand the legal ramifications. And really needing actual agents and not just marketing reps. There's some serious money at play there that needs to be taken into consideration. Last thing I would say as it relates to that, Jerry, I do think you're going to have a couple of early commitments like we always do. Some of those will stick and some won't. Some may be Lance Jackson, for example, right, Jerry? He committed early. But what about the Anthony Williams, the linebacker out of Shadow Creek, did not stay committed. KJ Lacey committed early and he stayed. But Racine Guillory didn't stay, right? There's a little bit of both. You got to understand that when someone commits this early, probably a 60-40 chance they stick all the way through.
Well, and I think the main reason for that is with your blue blood schools is if they take guys early, they may find somebody better.
Absolutely.
And it's not just a player in these cases, it's not the players having the second thoughts. Now, it could be a different NIL package from somebody else. But I think that's where I was going. This is expected to pass, right? And we're going to go to profit sharing in July. That's at least what the colleges I think is going to happen. But so how much is that going to change all of this as far as the recruiting process as well when there's more tiers? I'm interested to see what schools are going to do when there's more of tiers in recruiting. But a lot of these guys that commit early and bounce out of that decommit, it may be because those colleges say, well, this is kind of where we think your value is. And that's not going to be what some other schools have it valued at. And that's their way of moving on. That's the college's way of moving on.
Well, we're going to talk some more recruiting. We got a lot of recruiting questions to get to. But first, Bobby, if you'll let everyone know about Duck Camp, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. They are a sponsor for college football playoff week. They did it last week, and the Longhorns won. They're doing it again this week, trying to keep the mojo going. Duck Camp gear is made for the people that live for the moments out there where there are fish to catch, birds to hunt, time to kill, and football to watch. Based in Austin and dedicated to giving people best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel. From opening day to game day, they've got you covered. At Duck Camp, they believe you can't just sit around and wait for adventure to come to you. You have to get out there, stay out there, and make the most of each and every second. Here's the great seasons, y'all. Yes, hunting and football. Shop hunting gear at duckcamp.com. I got some for Christmas underneath the tree yesterday. Appreciate those guys at duckcamp.com.
Thank you for that. And like I said, a lot more recruiting talk to be had, and we're going to jump right into it. We have a super chat from Antonio Harris. Thank you, Antonio. Great interview with Bo Barnes. He's special.
Yeah, I think he's got a great culture fit. He's got it upstairs to go with the 6'2", 235 frame, the tenacity. One of the things he said in that the interview that you can archive there, I think that went up on Tuesday night on Texas football YouTube. He talked about how Texas says he's starting his career at Mike, but can move around. So interesting there. That's what Johnny Nance and those guys have talked about with Bo Barnes. He played in the what's now Army All-America game in Frisco last weekend. Bo Barnes, Nick Townsend, James Simon played in that. Barnes had 15 tackles and a pick six. James Simon had a 35-yard run. And as is normally the case for tight ends in those games, you don't really get a lot of balls thrown at you. But Nick Townsend apparently was decleating people blocking, and he did play only tight end in that game. But yeah, Bo Barnes, awesome. He's been parented well. He comes from a linebacker family. His dad played linebacker at New Mexico. I believe he has a brother that plays at Arkansas State, plays defensive back. But Bo Barnes has he has a motor, guys. I mean, he has the one thing, motor and physicality to go with the frame that you absolutely have to have. But I think he's been taught the linebacker position really well by his father. Then his linebackers coach at Skyline is Peter Jenkins, former Texas linebacker. The safeties coach there is Christian Scott. So as well at Dallas Skyline, both those guys played at Skyline. But Bo Barnes, we've had him on the show a few times. Awesome guy, awesome kid. And he has got a winner's mentality. And the last thing I'll say is, we talk about what's your transition to high school to college level? This guy probably, as a linebacker, played against the best athletes consistently week in, week out of any kid I've seen in high school football. I mean, he played in the Duncanville district. This is his senior year. They played Duncanville, Lancaster, DeSoto. I mean, you name it, Mesquite Horn, Cedar Hill. I mean, every single week. This is Fort Bend Marshall non-district game. Caleb Chester, by the way, looking to blow that guy. He played against Bobby fast guys every single week. I mean, he played against college speed every single week in high school football, which is very rare.
He just plays with physicality, Jerry.
Yep.
I mean,
SEC physicality.
You can tell it's not just SEC physical. I mean, it's just period. And you can tell those guys it pretty quickly on tape. It does not take long, right? When they're physical everywhere they go, they run through tackle, they run through blockers, play through contact. That's the kind of guy that you're going to want manning the middle of a defense, in my opinion, these days. It's a little bit different. Leonga Lafau is more like that than Anthony Hill, by the way. Yeah. Anthony Hill kind of likes to use his speed more, I've noticed. You got to be able to take on blocks a little bit more. Bo Barnes able to do that, in my opinion. And one of the reasons why I think he's an elite recruit for this Texas defense.
All right, our next question here comes from Jeff Carey, and it's in the super chat. Thank you, Jeff. He says, Christian Miller of Creekside High School in St. John's, Florida. He has a 100-meter dash in this in 2024 with a time of 9.93 seconds. Will he play football in college?
I do not believe so. I think he played when he was younger, high school football. Honestly, I haven't kept up with his late high school, but I think he is signing. He may sign endorsement deals in track. He's already done. Kind of like there was Arian Knighton a few years ago out of Tampa Hillsborough. Texas actually offered him as a wideout, and I went to see the guy, and he is now obviously an Olympian in the 200 meters. He walked away from football and signed an endorsement deal with Adidas in high school. I need to check to see if Christian Miller's done the same thing. I'm pretty sure he has, though I can't remember what company.
The star of the Olympics, or the young star of the Olympics in the 400 or whatever he was, that was up in Maryland, Jerry.
Yeah.
He plays high school football. He's not playing football in college.
No.
He's going pro track. That could be lucrative if you're elite.
Yes.
But you got to be elite. And I suffice to say, 9.93 in high school is elite, because I've never heard of a high schooler breaking 10 flat in the 100. I mean,
he's turned straight. He decided to turn pro, signed with Puma, not even going to college.
Man,
9.93 is
flying.
Yeah, he has the chance to be the fastest human of all time.
No.
Would be my guess.
No.
That's a good question, actually. I didn't know the answer. I had to look that up to see what he actually ended up doing.
I'm going to combine two questions here for you, Jerry. This one from Casey first about, is there any chance that Nick Townsend could end up enrolling early? And Carrie H wants to know, who will not enroll early?
So the non-early enrollees are Nick Townsend, which I think that ship sailed, Devin and Jordan Coleman, and who is my fourth? I'm forgetting. There's 4 in this class. Golly. So KJ Lacey is, the 2 running backs are, the 3 receivers are, Emory Winston is, Jackson Christian is, Nick Brooks is, Lance Jackson and Smith Orogbo are, the 3 D linemen are, the 2 linebackers are, Michael Terry's. Maybe it's only 3 then. Maybe it's only 3 guys. And then all the secondary guys are. So I think everybody. Grayson Littleton. Patrick Page, thank you. Grayson Littleton's the 4th. Thank you very much.
Is Michael Terry midterm?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. Good call, Patrick Page. Grayson Littleton. That's the 4th. He's staying running track there at Wiregrass Ranch.
All 3 transfers are midtermers, by the way.
Yep.
Brad Spence, Cole Brevard, Jack Boomeister. We thought maybe one of them might have to finish out, be a grad transfer, but that's not the case. All 3 mid-year eligible immediately.
And by the way, somebody said Michael Terry at practice. Some of the guys have been they've gone, taken physicals, taken part in some drills with practice. But if those guys are now playing in All-America games, they're probably not going to be with the team until January 13th. They may practice a few more times if they're in the Navy game, but the Under Armour game, those guys will be reporting tomorrow. Now, Texas wins over Arizona State, then there may be a few more practice days for those guys leading up to the January 10th game. By the way, yes, Smith Orogbo had surgery. He is not available for the spring. It'll be the summer. That was a knee, something he was born with that started just giving him some issues early in the season, decided to get that taken care of. So he is ready to go by August, but nothing career-wise for him.
And one other recruiting question before we switch gears here from your buddy Joe Z. He says, Jerry, which 2026 players do we have to watch out for an Oregon battle? My heart can't take much more of it.
Well, that's those are undecided right now. The NIL will paint that picture this summer. So we'll have to see on that. Where that goes. It's there's going to be some battles again, though, Josie.
And there should be, by the way.
Better.
Don't shy away from it. That's the one thing I love about Steve Sarkisian. He doesn't feel like this angst to get things done early, unnecessarily. And frankly, has he been proven right? Yes, he has. So we'll acknowledge it along the way, but remember, he's not he's not shying away from contact, I guess is the best way to put it.
I want to bring a comment from our Georgia fan, James Richards. Obviously, he watches a lot of high school ball. I want to say this about Nick Brooks. Was we talk about a lot of these guys. I think Nick Brooks' senior year, thanks, James Richards, for the comment. I think senior year, he may have been the most improved player in this signing class, which was to be expected if you watch junior tape versus senior tape. I went to see him during his senior season. Look, the move to Grayson, while it wasn't popular for the high school staff and people in Iowa, it was a great move for him at Grayson. I mean, that's a state championship program. They won it again. They beat Carrollton. Going up against the guy going to Georgia Tech, who's a very good edge rusher every day in practice, going up against Joseph Mbaktu every day in practice. Lost 15 pounds, I believe it was, maybe 20 now. He made a big jump junior to senior year. His senior tape's actually, Bobby, I think he's going to end up playing tackle. I think he's starting to show it. I think he's got a chance to do it.
If he could play tackle, that would be huge because I think tackle right now, Texas is tackle poor after this group. I really believe that. After Gooseby and Baker, who's left? I think Texas is tackle poor. If there is a position they need to hit strong, obviously John Turntine is a priority this coming year. But that's one of the reasons why the Michael Fasusi recruitment was so hot and heavy too, and important.
Okie dokie. Let's see this one here from Edgar. We appreciate your super chat. He says, "Happy holidays, gents. Watch y'all so much. My wife asked me if the Bobby and Jerry show was on yesterday. Thanks for all you do. Hook 'em."
It was not on yesterday, thankfully. But I'll tell you what, I enjoyed the day off. I was jonesing to get back at it a little bit this morning, though. Had to get my cup of coffee and get ready. Appreciate you, Edgar, for following along and being here with us.
And Bob, they are still up. I'm just not in the living room, but they'll probably be up through the new year. So,
well, yeah. When does everybody take down their Christmas tree, and when do you take down your Christmas lights? If you're one of those guys that leaves their Christmas lights up until February, you're the scourge of the neighborhood. Everybody knows you. They're like, that guy is still not taking his Christmas lights down. Are you that guy, Blake?
Thankfully, I'm not that guy. My wife, Krista, she's pretty adamant about getting them down, but we leave them up through the new year. But usually after the New Year's Day, they all come down, and then she gets all the Christmas decorations out about as quick as they came up. So it happens pretty fast in the Monroe household. Okay, let's see. Drew Lockhart here with the super chat. He says, "Jerry Hamilton, I believe you called it before the season started. We needed to see 40 sacks from our defense. You and Bobby said it yesterday. We are at 41. Thanks on Texas football."
That's always been a big number for me when you kind of look statistically at schools that were competing for a national championship. Nick Saban's Alabama teams are always in that 39-45 range. Clemson, those two really good teams were in that range. Georgia was above that. The second Georgia team didn't have as many sacks, but they just won at the point of attack so much. But most teams, that number is in that 39-40 range. Once you start getting into that range and over, you are really affecting the quarterback and Michigan was there last year at an area that the national champions or the team competing for the national championship truly do. It just historically, just a number I came across, and then you started looking at some of those players, and it was easy to see why that number is kind of a key in these 12, 13 game seasons for these teams. If you're around 39, 40 or above in sacks, because that's just a sack number. So what are you doing outside of it? It's just one of those statistics that matches up with 9 out of 10 teams.
And it's been the sack stat that has been a problem for Texas. The 3-year problem essentially of Pete Kwiatkowski saying we got to affect the quarterback more. So in that first year, Texas got more pressure on the quarterback, but didn't get more sacks.
Yep.
Last year they got a little bit of both, right? This year it has been sack heavy, and maybe that's with the addition of Trey Moore and Colin Simmons to go along with an Ethan Burke. As well as an Anthony Hill Texas just has so many different ways. And I think this is important. How has Texas gotten to the 41 sacks, Jerry? They've done it with personnel, but they've done it in waves of personnel. It's not just one guy out there collecting 15 sacks, right? It's been a wave of personnel that whoever they have on the field can get after it a little bit. I think that's been an important part because last year they had Ethan Burke, good pass rusher, but now they have Ethan Burke and Colin Simmons and Trey Moore and a year older Anthony Hill. All of that combined, I think, matters. It's created a more athletic defense and a front that can get after it a little bit better.
If you're looking, by the way, Ole Miss led the nation in sacks this year. They were a freak show with sacks, by the way, as a team. But if you kind of start looking around, Boise State 51, SMU had over 40. I mean, you start looking, and not everybody was there, but everybody's in that ballpark. I mean, Texas is now 6th, I believe 7th in the country in sacks. Oregon is up there, obviously in those numbers as well. Georgia's up there as well. There's something to that number because that means you're pressuring the quarterback a ton. Is it my time, Blake?
I was going to say Bobby is talking about getting after it. Well,
oh boy, Blake.
About joy mode.
Oh boy, look, it's time. I think I can speak for most men when I say we want to have better sex. And this for the sake of our partner, y'all need to have better sex. The issue is that over-the-counter erection pills contain unregulated chemicals, suggest unsafe doses, and include the risk of several other health problems. That's why we have partnered with our friends over at Joy Mode. Whether you're looking to spice up your intimate moments or increase your confidence in the bedroom, or in the third quarter Texas offense, Joy Mode makes all natural and science-backed supplements dedicated to helping men perform better across their core functionings, like scoring touchdowns after halftime. Their trademark product, the Sexual Performance Booster, is every man's solution for increased blood flow, firmness, stamina, performance. It's like a pre-workout, but for sex. Redefine your intimacy and go to joymode.com for 20% off with code ONTEXAS. That's 20% off plus free shipping with code ONTEXAS, all caps, at joymode.com. And my simple suggestion for the Texas offense, these come in like, how many packets? There's like 10. Just take them all at halftime, and Ohio State won't even show up for the third quarter.
Oh, goodness.
Don't be scared.
Texas offense used to just run out with packets of Joy Mode. Ohio State will just run off the field.
I want to give a shout out to our good buddy Rob Emfield, longtime viewer of the show. He says, "Hook 'em, I am 72 years old today. Happy birthday, Rob."
Congrats, Rob. Happy birthday, buddy.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we got some more super chats to get to, and let's talk Arizona State, guys. D3ZII, thank you for the super chat, says, what Texas opponent reminds you of or resembles Arizona State?
I thought about that. You have anybody, Bobby?
Yeah, Arkansas a little bit. Heavy play action, offense with their quarterback, run-oriented. That's the one that reminds me most of what they try to do. But from an offensive perspective, Kenny Dillingham and Bobby Petrino have some similarities, just like Steve Sarkisian and Kenny Dillingham have some similarities, to be honest. I would put those guys in that category more than any other. Arkansas does not have a great defense, but they have some guys on defense that can cause problems. Arizona State somewhat similar in that regard as well.
And then Randy wants to know, do you think that we shut down Cam Skattebo?
I want to say shut down. What is shut down of a guy? That's the question. So in the chat, name your carries and number of yards. He's also good out of backfield. I can say this, Texas State, 24 carries, 62 yards. A loss at Tech, 18 carries, 60 yards. K-State, 25 for 73. So he hasn't run roughshod over people. Now, they mix him in the passing game a lot when the run game's not working. So what's your number there? Iowa State, a lot of people that saw Arizona State for the first time against Iowa State say, oh my gosh, well, Iowa State was one of the worst run defenses in the country. That's kind of one of the things that was missed about that game. Loss in Cincinnati, 17 for 75. So in the two losses, he averaged, what's that, 67.5? I would think if Texas holds him into the 60s, low 70s, things are going to go very well for the Horns. Because he's going to carry it a lot, and he's going to get fall forward physical yards. He's not Ollie Gordon. He's a tough kid.
Are you saying Ollie Gordon's not tough?
He doesn't look like it this year. Didn't look like it in the Big 12 championship game last year. Where was he this year?
I'm
not saying he's not talented. I'm not saying he's not talented, and I'm talking more mental, but man.
A lot of people asking about Isaiah Bond, such as Randy. Do y'all think that Bond should sit out? Obviously, we touched on this a little bit ago. But like South KMX, is Bond expected to play versus Arizona State, or are we holding him until Oregon/Ohio State? People want to know y'all's opinion. Should Bond sit or play?
I don't think he should sit, but I know I'm in direct opposition to Jerry's comment. If you can play, you should play. That doesn't mean that you should play 50 plays in a game. You need to get back to game speed at some point if you're coming off injury. So if he can go, he should go. That doesn't mean he should play 50 plays. That's my take. People are saying, oh, we should rest him for Oregon or Ohio State. That's great, but what if there is no Oregon or Ohio State? Then you just saved him for nothing. I think you got to see what you got a little bit. And it always takes players at least 2 weeks to kind of get back into playing shape of a real game, by the way, not just, 10 plays, 15 plays. It takes them a while to get back into game shape.
Yeah. Where I come out is if he's not fast, he's just not the same player. So it just depends on where he's at for me. I mean, I could see him suit up for sure. I mean, it's 10 days out, but I would say this: if he's not even at a point where they suit him up, then I'm not sure where that actually will put him 8 days later from here, January 1st.
Six now, Jerry.
Yeah,
a week from yesterday.
I meant from 8 days from January 1st when the semifinal game would be.
No, it is. It's 6. It's 6 days, dude.
6 days from the quarterfinal, but after January 1, it's 8 days to the.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So January 1 to January 9.
Yeah, what's 8 more days? If he's not good enough for Sark to even consider it, is he going to be really ready in 8 more days? I don't know the answer to that, but it's kind of an interesting place where he's at because speed is his game, and at 4.5, big drop off from being a 4.3 guy in Sark's offense, right? What he can do.
No. Okay, Dean wants to know if y'all can tell him about Arizona State special teams, punter, kicker, coverage on kicks, etc.
Yeah, look, their kicker is Ian Hershey, and no, that doesn't make me hungry after yesterday. But look, he's 7 to 12 on field goals, long of 47. They haven't made a field goal over 45 this year. Long 47 over 47 this year. They haven't made a field goal over 47. So they are 9 of 17 on field goals this year. They've tried 3 different cats. So they've had the Auburn issue. They've had an issue. So they're 9 of 17 on field goals. They're only 3 of 7 from 40. They're only 1 of 3 from 30 to 39 yards. So they have had their own kicking issues this year at Arizona State. I think punting, they're all right, but kicking is they've had some issues kicking the football this year and converting field goals. So this is a game where Bert Auburn is the best kicker in this game.
There you go. Special super chat, from Corey B. He said, I was so hungry, I tried 2 corn dogs with some Duke's mayo. I love it. Get on board, Bobby Burton. Look 'em.
Go win a natty, and I'm on board. It's real simple. I'm here for it. I'm not kidding. I'll do it. I'll do it happily. Until then, y'all need to stop asking because it just ain't happening. My wife brought in a corn dog the other day after Jerry had his, trying to get me to do it on air. And I was like, no, this is just not happening. Texas needs to win a national championship, and then all bets are off. I'm here for it.
And then we talked about
can y'all imagine how many corn dogs with mayo Saban would have had to eat? Man, for a national championship, he'd had one every year almost.
Oh, goodness. We talked about sacks a little bit ago. John wants to talk about sacks next year. He says, do you expect us to go over 40 sacks next year? Do you think it may depend on the Trey Moore decision?
No, I don't. That's nothing against Trey Moore, but I think Texas is 40 again next year. I mean, Colin Simmons is a sophomore, maybe worth 14. Anthony Hill may go double digits in year 3. I mean, you're starting, Bobby, at 22, 24 with 2 players.
Ethan Burke.
Ethan Burke. I mean, I think Texas may be better pass rushing team next year than they were this year, even.
Did Brad Spence lead Arkansas in sacks?
4.5.
They've got dudes now.
Vosick had 2 sacks and limited reps. What's he going to do? I think good things are coming there. And, the crazy thing is Texas is getting 40 this year without blitzing at a high rate of percentage like a lot of other schools are. That's where the 40 is really a plus number, is they're doing it with 4- and 5-man pressures by and large.
Okay, our next question here comes from Archmania, and he says, "Where's I think he means Aaron Butler, Parker Livingston."
Go ahead, Bobby.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, Jerry. Livingstone has done really well of late, actually, and I've been told by multiple parties that he is stepping up and has stepped up throughout fall practice, during the season. So much so that he's, their need to go in the portal for receiver is not as pronounced maybe as it once was. That being said, if Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond both leave for the NFL, Bond for sure is going to go. Golden's got a decision ahead of him. Then Livingstone is one of those guys they feel really comfortable with and confident in. Aaron Butler's a little bit different in that he's a smaller guy and he's going to have to find a way to get on the field there. I'm not trying to say anything. How's he going to get on the field? Silas Bolden's not getting on the field right now. Silas Bolden's better than Aaron Butler. You can tell as a player. And he's having a hard time getting on the field. So you got to wait and see what happens there. And who Texas brings in via the portal, if they bring anyone at all.
All right, before we get to our next sets of questions, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell everyone about Laura Baker.
Yeah, absolutely. Laura is the Austin area real estate expert you need if you're moving to, from, or within the Austin area, not just Austin itself, but Round Rock, Georgetown, all parts in between, Marble Falls. Keller Williams Realty, Laura Baker is the realtor of choice. Laura at AndyAllenTeam.com. That's Laura at AndyAllenTeam.com. 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. She knows what she's doing. Lifelong Austinite, ready to help you find your next home or sell your next home. Again, 512-784-0505.
See, going back here to what we were talking about, other wide receivers, AJ wants to know, why doesn't Bolden get on the field more? He deserves to, in his opinion. So what's keeping him off?
Here's the biggest thing for me. You go to a practice and he's running behind Matthew Golden. You're going to take Matthew Golden off the field? I mean, they're two guys that play the same position right now. And I think that's a big piece of it. I really do believe that. I would like to see him get more time too. But are you going to take Ryan Wingo off the field? Are you going to take DeAndre Moore? Maybe. But you can't take Matthew Golden off the field right now. I mean, he's the one that's hooking up with Quinn deep. as much or more than anybody.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. I agree with you, but it's just a hard decision. And, Texas got to figure that out.
Well, we've talked about wide receivers. Let's jump over to running backs now. Marco says, if all the running backs are healthy next year, does Trey Wisner add gunner duties to his role on the team?
I would think no on that. I think that ship has sailed for him because, look, I mean, the reality is we'll have to see where Cedric Baxter progresses to. He's going to get there, but is he going to get there to be able to take hits and have his confidence back early in the season, or will that come as the season moves along? So I would say no to that. Christian Clark obviously is a no to that. Jarrett Gibson, that's not what he is. So those gunners, those future gunners from Texas are going to have to come from the secondary wide receiver positions, in my estimation.
I want to add this. Do you know who the gunner was? Alabama. Devontae Smith was a gunner during his Heisman Trophy campaign.
Yep.
So I wouldn't be too quick to dismiss it. I also think it's going to depend on the portal a little bit. I mean, Texas has a couple of gunners that right now, if they come back, I don't think you make a change. Those two guys could be portal entrants potentially. So you have to wait and see what happens. Derek Wisner, no. Hey, like I said, would you trade it for a Heisman Trophy if he were? I mean, Devontae Smith was a gunner. Those guys are more valuable than you realize.
Okay, Terrence Jones, has Texas faced a running back better than Arizona State's running back? Of course, talking about Cam Skattebo.
As a college running back, no. Not a better
year.
This year. Not as a player, no. As a NFL talent, ETN. I mean, Skattebo is probably not going to be a highly drafted guy. He's not going to test well. He's a niche player in the NFL to a certain extent. Now, he may overcome that. That's just my opinion. But as a college running back, Texas hasn't faced anybody as tough as this guy that's going to bring it, I mean, the way this guy does, in my opinion. I don't know, Bobby, if you've seen anybody. But, I mean, look, Jaden Ball is a better NFL draft prospect than Cam Skattebo. He may not be, as a freshman this year, he's not the college player that Skattebo is. Skattebo is a punisher on a college level. And he has, where does it say 37 receptions as well this year? He's their second leading receiver. Now their leading receiver. I
don't think that's his total stats.
No, this is just against AP top 25.
It's top 25s. Yeah.
Here's his total right here for this year.
Yeah,
37 receptions, 506 yards, 3 touchdowns receiving.
Got 2,000 all-purpose yards, guys. It's a strong season.
Yeah, he is the best college player that they've played for sure at the running back position this year. But I'll also say this: he is, because speed isn't his game. If you can turn him east to west, he's a much different player. So I'm very interested to see how Texas plays their interior front in this game. How aggressive they are getting up the field versus saying, all right, dude, you aren't running it downhill. We're going to win against your offensive line, but then we're going to turn you east and west. I'm interested to see what Kenny Baker does.
Rex St. Charles has a great stat there. 0 fumbles.
Yeah.
I mean, look at that. 0 fumbles
in his career.
College career.
Yeah.
I mean, and how many? That's over 700 touches. That's phenomenal. That is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's a good number.
Tremendous.
Yeah, Bradford said means he's due. There is some truth in that. Casey says, I don't think that's accurate. I don't think that's accurate either, but I'll have to go back and look. I don't think they count Sacramento. I think he had a couple at Sacramento State when he was younger, but maybe because they're FCS, they don't have them. But I'll check.
Texas Traveler with the super chat. Thank you for that. We appreciate it. He says, oldest dad, 65, of a UT grad last spring, 75 yards on 24 carries. and Longhorns win in a rout 42-13. Hell yeah, we're going to hook them.
I like what you said. I like the way you're thinking. I think if Skattebo has 65, 70 yards with other teams that aren't as good defensively as Texas have done that to him, especially with Jordan Tyson out. Somebody asked about Jordan Tyson. That is the younger brother of Jalen Tyson, the former Texas basketball signing, ended up being a first-round pick, just to answer that question from the chat. But he's not invincible. We're not talking about Ricky Williams here. Skattebo's a very good college football player, but there's been 3 teams that have held him to 75 less yards or less. I'll mention those again. 2 of those were in losses. Cincinnati, Sam Levitt didn't play, but they lost. Cincinnati, scored 14 because their backup quarterbacks is a huge drop-off. Texas Tech, 18 for 60, the loss up in Lubbock, and then 24 for 62 in Texas. So I guess you could say against state of Texas teams, maybe he struggles against the old state of Texas a little bit.
And AJ, earlier he asked about Silas Bolden, but he says, is there no way to get him more snaps with Bond out?
Well, one thing I wanted to add that conversation earlier, Bobby, is if Texas is running the ball really well, Quinn's not going to have as many pass attempts. And there's just not as many opportunities for targets for the wideouts when Texas is running the ball effectively. That's just the nature of the beast, too. Texas isn't an empty team very often to where they're going to get 4 wides on the field. So if they're running the ball effectively, which they have been outside of one game, it's going to limit the snap count.
I don't think that look, they've tried to cross-train Silas Bolden, but they haven't had a ton of success. Otherwise, he'd be seeing more action. That's 10 fumbles. This is per PFF. Thanks,
that makes sense. I knew he had some.
And I was going to say 700 touches and no fumbles.
Yeah, that would be
astronomical.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying Jaden Blue numbers, but so 1 out of every 70 touches, basically, is what it looks like. So 1 every 3 games.
And then Spence GPT2 comes in with super chat. Skattebo did lose a fumble against Cincinnati.
By the way, if you watch that game, credit to you for being a college football junkie. If that came off memory from watching Cincinnati and Arizona State, you need to get a free super chat or something. Because I did not watch that game.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. Well, according to Arizona State's page, Cincinnati was the lone fumble. Or no, I'm sorry. There was also one. Okay, here we go. Against Texas State, Cincinnati, and BYU as well. But out of those 3, he's only lost 1. So had to bounce back his way, apparently. All right. Black Wind says, I know Texas is looking at wide receiver in the portal, but isn't necessary since guys like Moore and Wingo are coming back. And as for speed, is Nyblack that guy?
I think they need a speed guy, Bobby. I think they need that element. Doesn't mean they have to have it. I think they need it if all things are equal. Well,
they rolled the dice on Eric Singleton out of Georgia Tech. He signed with Auburn. Now they're involved at least with Zachariah Branch at some level, although that looks like it's trending towards Georgia over Arizona State right now. I'm intrigued to see where Zachariah Branch and his brother Zion, the safety, end up at. Because they could wait here. It's only 5 days out from January 1st, Jerry. They could wait and take more official visits. I kind of think that's what they're going to do. Otherwise, they would have already made their decision for Georgia, theoretically, at least, right? Now, maybe they turn around and announce today and all bets are off. But the fact that they haven't done anything yet leads me to believe that they might go through this process and actually take a couple more visits in January. At that point in time, does Texas get one of those visits? Branch, the receiver from USC, who caught around 40 balls this year, but very quick, very elusive, and a guy that has a lot of what Steve Sarkisian likes in his receivers.
And before we get to our last couple of questions, before we wrap up today, Bobby, let everyone know about Austin Underground one last time.
Yeah, absolutely. Rick Valro and his team at Austin Underground have been specializing in difficult underground commercial installations since 2004. The team's engineering background gives Austin Underground the ability to perform work other firms often consider too risky. Rick and his team offer an end-to-end client experience, including seamless communication, budgeting, staffing, and top-notch trade partners. And most importantly, they produce solid quality work each and every time. That's Austin Underground. Rick, by the way, also is an entrepreneur by trade, as much as anything. As much as he is an engineer, he actually started the Lone Star Bar, and not started it, but revamped it up in Jonestown. If you're up in Jonestown or thereabouts, make sure you stop by the Lone Star Bar with Rick and his group up there. Have yourself a cold one, hang out for a little bit. They'll talk Texas football with you as well.
And we have a super chat here from Bradford. Thank you, Bradford. Really appreciate that. He says, is Kobe Black the next man up at outside corner next year when Jahdae Barron leaves? I love his game. And also with the defensive tackles that hit the portal, how has Alex January looked in practice lately? Hope y'all had a fantastic Christmas. Well,
so Santana Wilson had a very strong redshirt year as well. I've heard good things about Santana. Alex January, absolutely. I think he is going to be a big snap player next year for Texas, bright future. They tried to get him in more this year. It's just the experienced guys were just overwhelmed with experience, but it gave time for Alex to really develop this year too. But there were some situations he would have played more snaps. But yeah, he's going to be a very, very good football player for Texas. And as of right now, obviously him and Cole Brevard will be your guys first out of the gate next year. Melvin Hills as a rotational player, and we'll see where those three freshmen mix in, and they'll add at least two more guys through the portal.
Cornerback is Black is the next guy up, and whether it's Black or Warren Roberson or Santana Wilson, etc., we'll see what that looks like. It's not unheard of that Texas might go to the portal for more experience opposite Manny Muhammad. Don't think that for a moment, because Texas could be willing to do that. They've shown a proclivity to add experienced players. Right now, Texas is at 3 guys from the portal. I expect them to end at 7 or 8. And that means, yes, 2 or 3 more defensive tackles, but that also means 2 or 3 more from other positions to supplement what they've got. So they have not, and you have to remember, Texas traditionally likes to recruit and sign players from winning programs in college. They just do, whether that's Alabama with Amari Niblack or Andrew McCuba in Clemson, Gavin Holmes. We'll see what happens there. I think Gavin Holmes walked on senior day, by the way. So I would think he's gone at this point, but maybe not. Wardell Mack is playing nickel right now. That was suggested. But my point being on all of this, don't think that Texas is just only focused on defensive tackle. They're focused on grabbing players from winning teams a little bit. They haven't done that a lot in the portal thus far this year, but all of those players that are currently in bowl games, they have 5 days after their bowl games are over to go into the portal. I think there's going to be a second wave of portal entrants here in the next 5 days. So once you get through January 1, you guys are going to see another run of better players, in my opinion, from higher ranked teams going into the portal. And that's where Texas is going to try to make hay a little bit, I think.
Jeff Carey with another super chat. He says, if we end up playing Ohio State, we should wear maize and blue uniforms.
Well, we will be on this chat for sure. I don't know about that.
Oh, goodness.
We're going to get Connor Stallions on here that week.
Well, yeah, we should ask Connor Stallions to be a guest and wear the winged helmet with the Longhorn logo on the side.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
That's an idea.
Not amazing blue.
Love has limits. Says, with Ohio State's dominant win, Oregon being undefeated, Georgia beating us twice, why is the media continuing to hype up Texas?
Good football team. Texas is 12-2. Ohio State has proven.
Ohio State couldn't score on Michigan in a half, by the way.
Yeah.
They're
I
good, but I'm just saying.
Ohio State spit the bit at a horse track. That's why they're not. Texas did it once earlier in the season against Georgia. They didn't do it the second time against Georgia. They just got beat. Okay, out executed in crunch time. Ohio State just got embarrassed a little bit by a very average Michigan team. Okay.
Crazy thing about those games, too, kickers were the difference in those games. Ohio State missed a couple of mid-30-yard field goals at home. Else they actually, even though they didn't play well, they still would have pulled off the win and been in the Big 12 championship game. Texas, a couple of right hashes from winning the SEC.
I will say this: the reason why Texas is getting hyped up a little bit here, they are the only returning team to the college football playoff. They also have probably the straightest path to the semifinal right now. Like the three favorites to win the national championship right now are Texas, Ohio State, and and Oregon. So they think the winner, the Vegas, however you want to put it, as a collective, thinks that the winner of the national championship is going to come out of this side of the draw. So that's why there's a lot of media hype surrounding it, because Texas is going to be likely one of the ones in that semifinal playing to get in.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football presented by Rick Favreau and Austin Underground. I want to thank them along with Duck Camp, Joy Mode, and Laura Baker all for sponsoring today's show. Bobby, what do you got later today?
We've got a bunch of stuff coming up. CJ, Rod Babers, Coach Shipley coming into you with what we've got for the winning drive. Jerry, you've got a little
it's got to be controversial. CJ and I are going to rank the remaining college football playoff quarterbacks. We're going to rank the college football playoff quarterbacks for a show tonight, which ought to be interesting.
I may have to tune in for that one. We also have stuff coming on TexasFootball.com. CJ writing an article today breaking down a little bit more of that Arizona State team that we're looking at coming in Atlanta in 6 days now. All told, a lot of stuff going on for us here at On Texas Football. Hope you guys are able to tune in or join us in the discussion at OnTexasFootball.com. Really appreciate the community that's building there and everybody participating in it.
If for no other reason, just come over there and watch Joe Z make fun of me. That's worth your time.
There you go. And be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell so you're notified anytime that any new content goes up. And that way you don't miss a thing between that and on TexasFootball.com. And then check out the store as well. Bobby, you got the hats, you got the mugs at shop.
Wait, John W. says we skipped this super chat. Do we have a super chat we missed?
Yeah, it was about something that is not actually a thing, and so we're not going to talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry. Ask another question.
Yeah. Well, if you ask another one, we'll get to it tomorrow. I'll make that your super chat. But yeah, guys, shop.ontexasfootball.com. Get your hats, get your mugs. Bobby's all stocked up, ready to send them out. Get you a little post-Christmas gift, if you will. So we'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. So for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you then.
Hook 'em.